Good afternoon, this is Keith Hall and welcome back. Today's tutorial is going to be another tutorial using Python within Excel. And basically what I'm going to teach you today is, let's say you have in your company certain regions or certain product categories, and within your company you have color palettes or color schemes that you want to use within your organization, and you want to designate those regions or product categories with certain colors. And then when you create your graphs or plots, then you want to assign those, let's say, and what you're seeing now is a bar plot, let's say, and you want to assign those colors to certain product categories. In this case, we're going to look at a data set that we have product categories, or it may relate to regions. So in other words, we're going to create a dynamic bar plot in this case, and I'll show you examples of how we could use other plots. And we're going to pass in a color scheme or a color mapping. So when it creates the bar plot in this case, it'll assign those mappings, those color mappings, to a certain product category. So if we go over to our data tab, our data is just basically, I created it through ChatGPT. It exists with product categories, the monthly sales, and the region, and customer rating, and date. So in our case, we're going to be basically dealing with the product categories and monthly sales. So our first step is in Python within Excel, we want to create the data frame. So in other words, we want to map out the data and create a data frame. So we're going to take this data here, this data range, and create a data frame. Now I already created all the code within this tutorial, so it'll be shorter today, but I'm going to walk you through all the code. So first step, create a data frame. How do you create a data frame? You're going to assign a variable. In this case, I just call it df, and we're going to select the range. Now it could be an Excel table or it could be just an Excel range, which is what I did was. So I use the XL Python function, and I'm going to pass in my range or an Excel table name, and which is basically I just highlighted my data range, and that's how I assigned it to it. And I'm going to tell it that we want the headers, and it does include headers in it. So that's step number one. Step number two, now I created a custom defined function. So when we call it later, we're going to pass in our colors. Right here, I have a list of colors. They could be just a text value like purple, or they could be hex values. Okay, and I'm going to assign those colors to certain product categories. So let's walk through this define function. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a dictionary mapping with product category that you see to validated colors. Now you'll see why I say validated colors later on. And then invalid or missing colors default to a specified fallback color. So in other words, my custom defined function takes in two arguments. One is required, which is our data frame, and the other is our default color. So in other words, when we use this particular library up here, which is not default loaded within Excel, if it doesn't recognize any of these colors, whether they're hex values or just name values, it will detect that, and then it'll just assign a default value of black, and that's what this is here. So let's scroll down, and I just explained the arguments, and what it returns at the end when it processes, it returns a dictionary. Now, if you know Python, a dictionary is basically a pair of key values and keys and their values associated with that key. In this case, the key is product category. The value will be color. Okay, so now our first step in this function is to create an empty dictionary, and I'm just calling it color palette. An empty dictionary is signified is with 2 curly braces. Now let's scroll down here. Now we're doing like a for loop. So basically what we're doing is we're using the zip method within Python. And what that does is takes a pair of keys and values. Okay, so we're going to be passing in a data frame, and you'll see what that data frame is later on. But basically that data frame consists of the first column, product category, and the second column, color. So, and then what this does is it takes multiple iterable objects is basically how Python classifies it. And in this case, it's going to be a pandas series or a pandas data frame. Okay, in other words, iterable means that we're going to iterate through these through using this for loop. Okay, now this for category is defined by you. It's not, you don't need to call a category. I'm just mapping it so it's easier with the data frame column. Same thing with color. So what that does, it takes the data frame and zips it basically and creates an iterable object that it's going to take the first column product category and assign it to this purple right here. So now we want to check to make sure before we go further, we want to make sure that this color here, check if the color is a string, okay? And that's what this isInstant method does. It takes color, this color here, and makes sure it's a string. If it is, then it checks the second condition right here. And this second condition will only occur if this passes true right here. This isInstant color, and then checks to see if it's a string. Color.strip basically takes this value here, okay, and removes the leading white space and trailing white space from it. So let's go back up here to this function, okay. So that's what color.strip does. And then once these two conditions are met, then it goes on to this AND condition. And so mcolors is a library within Matplotlib, okay? And at the top, as you can see, I'm importing that library and just using an alias called mcolors. And it uses an isColor-like method on that. And it takes this color.strip again. It takes this color here. Now, what that does is within this library, it has defined colors in there. If it recognizes purple or if it recognizes this hex code, then it's going to pass as true. If it doesn't, if you pass an invalid hex code or named color, it won't pass. And if that's true, if it doesn't pass, then that if it does pass, it defaults assigning the value that we pass it to this color palette category, okay? And if it doesn't, it assigns the default color. So in other words, it says color palette category, okay? And it brings that into a dictionary. So it takes the key value pairs and it gives that back. And what it does, it then, as it iterates through all these that we pass it in this data frame, then it jumps back down and it says return the color palette, which is a dictionary. And you're going to see that in a second how that looks. Okay, so that's the defined function. Our third step is that we want to, first of all, go to our data frame and return a sorted unique value list of all the categories that exist in this data frame. So we're going to extract the unique categories in this column here and sort it. So let's go back up here. So that's what this is doing. So it's taken the data frame, it accesses the product category column, and applies the unique function or method upon that. And it returns a unique list, okay? It's not actually a list, it's a NumPy array. And then after it does that, let's sort it, which is a function, a default function within Python. So it sorts that and it returns all that. And all I'm doing is right now I'm hard coding these values here. And I want to hard code purple to apparel category, or electronics, it's this hex color, and so on. Okay, so now let's go over to the bar plot here. So we want to create a data frame for the color mapping. So we're going to call it category underscore colors underscore data frame. And we're going to assign that and select the range. So we're going to come back here, and this is what we're going to be selecting, the range, okay? And then we're selecting the column headers too, product category and color. So we'll come back here. So now we got a data frame. So if we click on this, you can see that we got that data frame created. Okay, now let's create, now what we're gonna do once we have this data frame here, we're gonna pass that to the custom defined function that we just walked through. Okay, and it returns a dictionary. So what this does, I already calculated this out, so I'm not running anything right now, but if I click on it, you'll see the dictionary. So we got apparel assigned to purple. We got a key value pair for each one of these. That's what a dictionary is. So automotive, we got green, or books, we got this hex color. So it entirely matches up with the data frame that we select up here. Now, once we have that, we want to create the actual bar plot. Now, the bar plot, basically, we're using PLT, which is PLT is an alias for Matplotlib library, and we're using a figure function, and we're going to pass in the figure size. Figure size is just basically we're working with a plot area, which is a canvas in the background, and what's done on top of that canvas is the actual plot. So we're assigning it a 12 inches width and height of 6 inches. So now we're going to use the Seaborn library, which is automatically loaded within Excel. So if you want to know what the automatic libraries already come and go up to formulas, we're going to go to initialization. And as you can see here, give it a second to load up. It says these are the imported libraries. So SNS has an alias for the Seaborn library. Okay, now we're going to use the bar plot. So what do we want as the X value, which is the X axis? Within our data frame that we're going to pass it using a data parameter. Okay, we're going to say the product category column is the x-axis, which is right here. So it's going to give you a list of all the unique product categories in our data frame. Our y-axis is going to represent our monthly sales. Okay, so we're going to take the monthly sales column in our data frame, and that's what we're going to plot here. Now the palette, this is where this custom function comes in. Remember, we returned a dictionary, and this parameter here requires a dictionary to be passed to it. So that's why we had to create a data frame and then subsequently turn that data frame into a dictionary. So that's what we're passing it here. And then a CI is the confidence interval equal false. Now, I'll go into that more in more detail and how hard, what parameters we're going to be using, but it's not needed at this point right now. Future videos will talk about these other parameters. Okay, so once we do that, it creates this bar plot. Now what we want to do is take the Matplotlib library and use the xticks. Now, what does that mean? It's going to take these categories that it plots, because sometimes they might be too wide to display horizontally. We want to rotate it by 45 degrees. So that's why you have these product categories on a slant right here. And what the right means is it stands for horizontal alignment. So we're going to horizontally align this to the right. And on a plt.title is basically we're setting the title of the plot. And I'm just passing it in a string of what I want the title to be, as you can see, monthly sales. So now let's go back here and adjust these colors. And I'll do it in two instances where I'm just gonna pass in a different color than it is, and then we'll come back here and you'll see that it changed the color. So let's go to sports and outdoors. Currently it's orange. So let's go to the color map, sports and outdoors. Just a second. Sports and outdoors is down here, and it's basically an orange color. And so I'm just going to type in black, B-L-A-C-K. Press enter. Okay. So now you can see, let's go back to the bar plot, sports and outdoors. Just a second. As you can see, it changed it to black. Now let's go back there, Control Z to undo that. Let's go back there, sports and outdoors, give it a second to recalculate. As you can see, it changed the color. Now let's type in a random color that I can misspell something, and let's misspell beauty. Right now it's like a maroon color. So let's go back over here, beauty. It's actually called brown, but I'm just going to type in an invalid color. So I'm just going to type in random. I know that's an invalid color. Now let's go back to beauty. Give it a second to recalculate. As you can see, it turned black. Why did it turn black? Because our function here, we had a default color of black, and by going through this iteration down here, this for loop, it checks whether or not that the color that's being passed in there is valid. It checks it against this library here to see if it's a valid color. So that's why it turned black. So let's Control Z to turn it back, and it got the color back. Now you could utilize this functionality in other types of plots. Box plot. This is a violin plot, and this is a strip plot. Okay. And again, in future tutorials, I'll go more into what all these are. But let's just do this exercise again to make sure it's changing on this plot. So let's go to toys and games. And let's see, where's it at? It's down here. I'm just going to do black again, B-L-A-C-K. Toys and games. Give it a second to recalculate. There it is. Box plot, and see toys and games changed the black also. So I just want to show you examples of how you could utilize this technique where you can create a dynamic chart using Python within Excel, and how you could pass certain color mappings to that chart so it gets updated for all the different categories in this case. Again, you could apply this to your region. So all your different regions can have certain colors mapped to that region. So again, I hope this tutorial was useful for you today. And I want to thank you for stopping by. And remember to subscribe to my channel. And also, please like and share this tutorial because I know other people that work in this field want to learn how to utilize Python and Excel, and also how to create these different plots using these techniques. Thank you. I want you to have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.